Hello and welcome to episode 32 of the Indie Film Academy podcast. I don't know whose accent this is. Today we're talking with horror master Danny Draven. So buckle up, here we go.
Should be up here on the left, and there it is.
Dum dum dum.
Be sick.
Good job.
Yeah, slow down, slow down.
You sure this is it?
It's gotta be. This must be the entrance.
There we go.
This place isn't so creepy.
Why don't we explore a little bit?
Sounds good to me.
Oh, you feel the temperature change?
It's like old files.
I wonder what happened to all these people. Like, where do they go?
Oh my God.
Those fingernails?
Who knows who's down there? What the hell was that?
It's coming from that room. I don't hear anything.
Like I have all these questions that I've just been coming up with on my own, but what I was thinking we could do was just kind of go through the different parts of the first book. Going strictly on the table of contents, and just kind of do a brief description of kind of those different aspects of making a horror film, and then just kind of go from there. Just use that as the framework. Yeah, and obviously, sure. I don't want you to go, so far into it. I mean, the thing that I found is that usually the more into it you get, the more interested people get in, buying the book and
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, I did have one guy I talked to not too long ago who was like, yeah, if you read my book, I'll tell you all about that. It's like, come on, dude, give me something.
No, I hear you. No, totally. I'm happy to. I don't do that. You just ask me whatever you want, and I'll tell you whatever comes to mind. If they buy the book, great. If not, it doesn't. When I get a $20 royalty check in the mail, it doesn't. It's not about the money. So it really isn't. But this book, the first edition is actually very simple. I mean, the second edition is just enhancements to the first. So it's only. It's about 140 pages more than the first edition. And a lot of that is just newer interviews, and a lot of the information has been updated. So the chapters are all really the same. I only added really one. It's just the information was updated considerably because it was out of date, because it was 5 years old. But, right. And a lot of new, really good interviews with people like Nick Garris and Kate Hodder and all these other dudes. And so which is just pretty much the big difference. And it's got a really good overhaul as far as like a lot more artwork was added, like a lot of really cool like grindhouse art just for eye candy, really. Yeah, and stuff like that. So it is by far the definitive best edition of that book, and probably the last. And it'll has a hardcover edition, which is really cool. I mean, it's kind of expensive, but they do have a hardcover one which is kind of cool for it. But anyway, yeah. So it's so whatever we talk about with the book, it's very similar to the second. It's just more updated is all.
Well, I mean, that might be a good jumping in point. What do you consider the major things that have changed from the first book to the second book?
Technology and distribution mainly, because the filmmaking process is really it has been kind of the same for 100 years. It's just the technology has changed to the point where particularly in my book, it has to do, what I changed was the distribution chapters, which that's different with digital distribution and everything, and particularly some of the stuff in the production, because the cameras have gotten better, bigger, smaller, and shoot higher quality. Right. So yeah. I think it's just mainly the technology stuff in the book is the biggest update, and the interviews, because I added about maybe 10 people, I think. But I mean, they're really good interviews because these guys are working professional filmmakers. I mean, I got Mick Garris and I sat down and had a great lunch, and we had this like 2-hour interview, and I think in the book it's like 8-9 pages, and they're really good, insightful questions. I had an awesome interview with big time composer John Ottman and editor. And that's like a 10-page interview. It's really good though. And John Debney, the composer John Debney, and Tibor Takas, the guy who directed The Gate and Spiders 3D, and he did a really good one too. Because I know him. I edited a movie for him years ago for Sci-Fi Channel, and I remember when I was editing it with him, he was checking his phone and he was making Mega Snake at the time, and he was showing me some of his story. he was showing me some of his storyboards, and I was like, because we were just sitting in the editing room, like, oh, that's pretty cool, this is pretty cool storyboards. So then, like, literally, like, well, I don't know, it's 8 years later when I decided to interview him, I was like, hey man, do you still have those Mega Snake storyboards? Because those things are really well done, and I should put those in the book. And so that there's this one scene where the snake eats this guy, and it's the exact storyboards that they did for the film. So you get his interview, and then you get 6 pages of these really beautiful storyboards that they did for it, and then you get some frame grabs from the movie how they actually shot it, and
that's cool.
And yeah, just stuff like that. I got a really good interview with some other producers, Mark Ordesky and Jane Fleming they did Exists, the big Bigfoot movie that Eduardo Sanchez did. They were producers on that, and there's Mike Mendez. He's in there now, director of Big Ass Spider. And
all right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And oh boy, Kane Hodder, Michael Berryman. And I think I'm probably missing a few people, but anyway, it's one of the things that people really enjoyed about this book is the interviews, especially from the first edition. I mean, all the information there is great anyway, but the interviews really kind of drove it home for people because you're hearing really good advice from people who are actually working professionals in Hollywood.
Right.
So it was a favorite in the first edition, so I decided in the second one I just want to add a lot more. So that's what we did.
Do you have the same interviews from the first book as well, or is it
yes.
Okay?
Yes. No,
because I know you interviewed James Wan in the first book, right?
Yeah, he's still in there.
I think you want to keep him in there.
Yeah. That's I interviewed him before he, back when he was making I think it was the first Insidious or something like that. It was a while ago when we talked, but
right.
So he did a really good interview, and everybody's the same. It's I think I had to remove one person because it was just what they were talking about was so outdated that they got removed. But other than that, it's all the same people plus 10 or 12 people that I've added. So yeah.
Is there anything that kind of sticks out at you, like something that just kind of blew your mind with an interview, or somebody who just kind of said something to you that you didn't really know beforehand, or I don't know, just kind of sometimes you talk to one of these filmmakers and it's just like, oh wow, that's something.
Yeah,
that
sure. Really... Sure, absolutely. I mean, when I talk to say somebody like Mick Garris or somebody, and I'm asking him specific questions about how he directs actors and what his process is like, and all that stuff. It's different for everyone,
right.
But his answers were very insightful, and not all of them made him into the book, but the ones that did, I thought were the most insightful ones. And it's just really even as the interviewer, I mean, I'm like, oh wow, I didn't. That's interesting. That's how you do. That's how he works. And then I see how somebody like Tibor works, or what Kane Hodder was thinking when he decided to play the character of Jason, and what he did to make it a scary character. And he would answer that question and
right.
Things like that. Because the guys like Kane Hodder and even Robert Englund and Michael Berryman and all the guys that have played monsters, I always ask them what their process was like as an actor to really develop that character. It's neat because it's all great horror movie monsters are more than just a guy sticking a mask on or a guy in a glove. There's a lot more behind it, and to understand their process was was very insightful. And that's what I think you get when you read these interviews in this book, is you really see like, wow, Robert Englund really, he really had a method to how he portrayed Freddy, and same thing with Jason, and same thing with Pluto, and Hills Have Eyes, and all that stuff. So it's a fun conversation. It's just kind of like two guys out, sitting at a bar having a beer, talking about their making movies, and that's kind of the style of the interview. But
right, can you share a little bit about that, like what or just the whole concept of directing actors in a horror movie, whether it be the good guys or the monsters or whatever.
The whole idea of directing the monsters for I'm sorry, what do you mean, like the
well, what is your approach? What did you learn from these people? What is your approach, and what are some things that you've learned from talking to directors about directing monsters or directing actors in general?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, I think it's certainly going to be different for every director, but I think instinct has a lot to do with it. When directing actors, it's instinctual. It's trying, not my styles. I'm very much like an actor's director. I don't. I mean, I have the technical background, no doubt, because I own a post company, and I've been an editor I've edited more movies than I care to remember. But when you combine the sort of technical background with the actors, when you understand actors, I think it really can make you a very strong director. Because a lot of people, they come out of film school, or they get into their first film, and they're scared of actors, and they're scared of the process. It's kind of like, okay, they just talk to an actor like they're a puppet. Like, okay, you say this line, and you stand here, and then you walk over here, and then the camera's going to push into your face, and then you're going to walk off screen. Okay, you got it. And then the actor's like, oh, okay. And then they can do what you're talking about, but that's not really directing. That's just technically, you're choreographing the scene. You're just blocking the scene at that point. So my process has always been to really take care with the actors, and to really spend a lot of time with them, and just be there for whatever they need, because and give them what they need from a director, so they can play the scene properly, and have the technical understanding to communicate that to the crew and to the DP. So that's my process. It's kind of a little of both. Some people are just completely technical, it's just like they hire, certainly it's always good to hire the best actors you can afford. And you just kind of, most of the time you hire an actor of that caliber, that you don't need to do much at all. It's just sit back and watch it happen, because they're so, amazing, and they get it, and other times, they need a lot more, and they do need that push and that technical, direction. Maybe it's their first film, they don't know how to hit a mark. So
what do you do if you get in a situation where you've hired somebody and everybody's there, the whole crew, and everything's lit, and the actor just isn't giving the right performance, or it's just not working? Is there any trick you have, or what goes through your mind as a director?
Oh, well, I think if everything, if you're on the set, everything's lit, and the actor's coming out, and it's a lot of times it's the first time a lot of times there's no chance, especially in low budget movies, there wasn't really any rehearsal. It is the first time that you're doing the scene, and what sounded good on what sounded good on paper, what sounded good in your head, is certainly not what's happening. And so you get there and you see him do it, and you're like, oh Jesus, I mean, I've been in situations where I'm like, I was like, I don't even think we cast the right person, so then you're like, oh man, okay, but what are you going to do? You already hired them. They're there in front of you. You got crew and everybody there, and you're kind of like, yeah, he probably wasn't the right choice, but this is what I have to work with. So let's do the best we can with what we have, So I mean, I've definitely been in that situation, but I think, if you're in a situation where an actor's not giving you what they want, the best thing to do is to pull them aside. Don't talk in front of the whole crew, but to pull them aside, talk, and talk to them about what you're certainly do. Don't criticize, don't yell, be an ass, but is to set the person aside and just tell them what you're looking for in the scene, and don't over direct them. Just tell them what the intention is in the scene, how their characters relate to one another, maybe what the scene is about, and let the actor be the one that interprets what you're saying and adjust their performance based on that. The worst thing you can do is to go up to an actor and give them a line read. No, I want you to say the line like this. or I mean, right. The actor will look at you like, you little douchebag, you know what I mean? Like, right. They're not puppets, they're not marionettes, these are not people that you can just, program, so a good directing is just really understanding the process, their process, respecting their process, and being able to communicate to them in the actor's language. And if you can do that, you'll be, the actors will love you forever, and two, you're gonna have a great performance. And the worst thing you could do in that situation is to try to go out there and act it for them. It's like, no, okay, let me show you how to do it. And then you go, no, you come over here, and then you say this line, you say it like this, and then you turn around. You know what I mean? It's like,
right.
That's not how it goes. So yeah, I mean, I guess that would be my sort of advice for handling a situation like that.
Okay. Now, the podcast is primarily geared towards people who are most likely outside of LA and want to make their own feature film. And a lot of people, and I also think that one of the best ways to get into the industry and have one feature, that actually has some success financially is to try and make, horror film, just because there's a built-in audience and there's, you don't necessarily need the biggest stars and everything. So what I was hoping we could do is just kind of walk through the process of where things begin, what you need to get started, maybe more towards the producer's side of it. When you're coming up with a project, I mean, how much do you go to like somebody in distribution and like pitch ideas, or how does it all work so that that at the end of the whole thing, you're going to know kind of where that production is going to go?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, that's yeah. I mean, every project that you do. I mean, look, if it's your first, one thing you have to understand if you're getting into filmmaking and period is you have to understand that it is a business. You're making a picture with the intention of it being seen. It's a business. It has to be something marketable and sellable and of high quality. If you're coming out, if you're doing something on your own and you want to do like a little movie that it's just for yourself and maybe it's an art piece or something like that, that's fine. You can do whatever you want. But in my book, and the stuff that I'll talk to you about today is from an entertainment perspective, from a business perspective of if we're making a movie, we're making a movie to tell a great story. We're making a movie to make a cool movie. All that is there, but we're also making a movie that we're going to be able to get distributed and seen, because at the end of the day, we want people to see and like our work and hopefully make sequels, after sequel. So with that in mind, always think that remember that it is a business. So start out with something that, horror is a great genre to start in, no doubt, because it's kind of an evergreen genre. It's something that has always been successful at the box office. I mean, whether people turn their nose up to it or not, the fact is that horror does extremely well at the box office, and that can be seen with movies like The Conjuring or how many other horror movies that have come out that have just really done well. So if you're starting out, I think that coming up with an original great concept to start with, and you don't have to. It is a good idea to think about distribution and think about where you're going to go with it. Early on, because you don't want to get too far into pre-production or production and start not even knowing what genre you're in. You're kind of like, well, I'm not sure. It could be a horror comedy. It could be a comedy. It could be just horror. You really want to have a definitive plan. Okay, we're making a low budget slasher film. We're making a zombie comedy. Okay, and then you know what you're making. You do your research, you do your homework, you watch, you see all the films that have been made on that subject, who they've been distributed by, that sort of thing. And you really come up with you really know what's out there and what the market's like, and you make the film. You know, I mean,
Now, let me ask one quick question.
Sure.
Just out of curiosity, where's the primary place that you do research of that nature? Is it IMDb, or is it just, do you have some other place that you see, all the different horror films that are releasing, how much, who's the distribution company and all that? Is it just IMDb, or is it, somewhere else that you look for that?
Well, there's a lot of places that you can look, especially with the internet. I mean, certainly the IMDb is a great resource. Read the trades. Look, I mean, I read the trades. I read, Hollywood Reporter and Variety. Who's making what they're making, who's remaking what. Coming down the line, even from the studio level. There's a Home Media Magazine. That's a really great resource to see, like, kind of what's coming out on DVD, what's coming out on Blu-ray. That's a good one to read and see what's performing well, what's, on home video, that sort of thing. And the internet and the IMDb, I mean, those are really, you don't think you don't need to go crazy with it, but, if you just get an idea of okay, are there any zombie movies coming out anytime soon, or how are they doing? And is it, are they being distributed? And if they are, who buy, that sort of thing. So yeah, you just do your research before you go out and make one, because if there's something coming out, or some other guy, and it happens so often, so many people are making movies. It's like, oh, that guy made that one. It's just like mine. Damn it, And it's so it happens, but it's good to have more than one idea too. So if you're like, well, maybe it's not a good time. We could make the film, but maybe it's not a good time to make it right now. Maybe we'll make it like next year, and then in the meantime, we'll make this other project that we had in mind. And let it cool off, because if the movie comes out and everybody hates that subgenre of horror, I mean, then probably not a good idea to go out and make another found footage movie,
Right.
So look, I mean, I made a found footage film, and honestly, the whole reason we made that, I didn't want to make a found footage film. I never intended on making a found footage film. It was just, it was a project that came to me, and it was like, hey, we need to make a found footage film. And I'm like, found footage film? I was like, well, didn't Blair Witch do that? Why would we make a found footage film? Well, it's kind of, it's kind of really popular, again, because, you got Paranormal Activity, and the wreck movies were, and all that stuff. And I was like, yeah, those are great. Those are like, $1 million, I mean, not Blair, but, wreck and stuff like that. I mean, they had pretty big budgets for those found footage films.
Right.
And it was like, yeah, but the market was hot for those at that time, and we had some inside contacts for when it came to distribution, and it was kind of like, hey, so we make this found footage film, it's going to get distributed, and it's a good time for it, so we ended up making. So, and that's how kind of that movie film Real Evil, or now AKA Spectres, was made. And
so did they come to you? Like, I was just talking to Scott Kirkpatrick about how they build a project, and then they'll hire, a screenwriter, they'll hire a director, and everybody else. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've already kind of sold the project to the distribution company before they even, put together the screenplay. Is that pretty common?
No, I don't think it's, I don't think it's on the low budget kind of level. I don't think it's that common to really sell the project, like sell the project as far as like distribution rights. I mean, and then go make the movie. I think it used to be like that maybe back in the 90s and stuff, where they would sell foreign, you sell these, pre-sales, based on artwork, like Full Moon used to do back in the day. It would be like, hey, here's an artwork and a title, you guys interested? And then they'd be like, yeah, we love it. And then they would, advance most of the budget that they would need to go make the film. But these days, especially on the lower budgeted level, it's especially if you don't have a star attached, forget it. I mean, the distribution companies will be like, who's in it? And they're like, well, nobody, my brother, my sister, you're not going to get money from a distributor. Now, if you come to them and say, Nicolas Cage is attached to it, yes, but you're talking about a whole different level of filmmaking at that point. But I'm talking on an indie level with let's just say for the sake of this conversation that there's no stars in it, and you're just making it with some talented actors that you find, but there's no recognizable name in it. Your money is most likely not be coming from your distribution, from a distribution company, unless you're self-distributing. But in that case, it's coming from you anyway. It's not common. It's more, what's more common is is the company, the distribution company is often, sometimes on the lower budget stuff, that the distribution company is often the financing company as well. So it's kind of their own project anyway, but they're the one making the decision on what kind of movie they're making. I mean, like Full Moon, for instance, Full Moon Pictures. I mean, they're kind of their own distribution company, and they went out, especially now, because they have FullMoonStreaming.com, which is where they stream all their latest projects. But I mean, that whole business model is kind of like, they make their own product and they distribute their own product. They make a new film and it comes out through their website, their streaming website, and that's a big thing now too with like the Vimeo in demand and all that stuff. Is you can go out and make a film and put it up on a site like Vimeo on demand, and you can send people there and they can pay to stream your movie, or they can pay to download your movie. And it's a great distribution method, but you can lead the horse to water, but you can't necessarily make them drink it. You know what I mean? Right. So you still have to have a higher quality product for people to want to go there and stream it and buy it. So right. Yeah, did I answer a little bit of your question there?
Yeah, no, it's perfect. I get obsessed because I always try to put together this magic formula for, I've talked to some people that work in distribution and they're just like, yeah, man, it's just so oversaturated now. And I know all these people who have lost tons of money because they went out and they made these, horror movies for like, $500,000. And then they got to the distribution and it was like they just lost everything because it wasn't like the right thing. So one of the things that I try to help people with, and also myself, is like figuring out, maybe we can talk for a second about, budgeting and how much money, more or less kind of what things are, should be priced at, because I know people who go out and make their first movie for, $100,000, $200,000. And, I've heard other people like, just do it as cheap as you possibly can, because at the end of the day, if you don't get distribution, then you haven't lost your shirt, Yeah, so what is your take on that in terms of just like budgeting? Say if somebody in, middle America, whatever, is like wants to make a horror movie and wants to try and like maybe take it to AFM or something or whatever, what kind of advice, what kind of budget range, how should that all be broken down when they're first starting out and trying to produce a film?
Yeah, sure. I totally answer that. But just to add to your distribution comment, about the people who've lost money. I mean, believe me. I mean, I know so many people that have lost a lot. I mean, including myself. When I've pulled out the credit cards and done the whole thing, and been in massive credit card debt for films. Right. For years, trying to pay them off and for shit that wasn't even fine. It was just stuff I wanted to pay for out of my own pocket to make it better. And I didn't even own the rights to it. And I was paying for stuff. I mean, it's just really stupid stuff like that early on. But I mean, but yeah, people have lost a lot when it comes to distribution. So, when it comes to, I mean, thinking that, okay, well, we're going to spend all this money, but we're going to go out and we're totally going to get it distributed. I mean, especially now, I mean, it's just not like that anymore. I mean, it is absolutely oversaturated. It has been for a long time. So, your product needs to stand out if you're going to even have a really good chance of a really good distribution deal. And and you know, just going out with some friends and shooting a slasher over the weekend, you know, and you max your credit cards out for 40 grand or whatever, you know, you really can't expect to be getting that back, you know. And I always say, you know, look, don't invest more than you can afford to lose, because it's a very, very big possibility that you'll lose all of it, or you might get it distributed, but you won't necessarily get the money back. I mean, because you know, when a distribution company takes over your movie, they might give you a little bit of an advance if you're lucky. They give you a little bit of advance, like say, okay, well, we'll give you $2,000 of the advance, and then you'll never see another dime ever again. And that's happened to me on films that I've done. And it's like, you know, the company goes out of business, and it's like, hey, what happened? You know, what happened to those guys? Oh, they changed the name of their company again. You know, and it's like, oh, well, we need to see statements. We need to see a producer statement. No, you know, we can't do that for you. So all the money that you've seen is, you know, the advance, you know, and it sucks for the filmmaker, because, you know, at that point, your movie's already been distributed. You know, you can get, you can get the rights back and try to redistribute it and everything at that point. But, you know, it's kind of used goods at that point. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, yeah. So when you're going out of the gate, I mean, it's just really be careful with the amount of money that you're committing to something, and I think you'll live a happier life when if something doesn't work out the way it's supposed to when it comes to distribution. But going back to your budget question, you know, you asked me what some you know, what some budget tricks are for somebody coming out.
Definitely.
Well, first of all, is if you're to spend trying to spend as less money as you possibly can. I mean, you really have to kind of don't be annoying, don't be a moocher, you know, but whatever, you have to sit down on a piece of paper and write down all the things that you, your friends, your family have available that you can use for free. Then what you do, you sit down and you say, okay, well, I have my parents' house. I have a lake. There's some public lands that nobody cares if we shoot there. There's that old abandoned building that we could totally shoot at. You know, we have a boat. We have a car. You know, we have my mom's a teacher, and maybe I can shoot at the school or something like that. So you write all those things down on a piece of paper of all the things that you have for free, and it can be other things too that you can put in the scene, like Uncle Bob has a Lamborghini, or so and so has an AK-47 or so, I don't know, whatever it is. And you write all those things down, and then what you do is you look at all that stuff, you put it up on a board, and you can look at all that stuff and say, what kind of movie could I make with all of these things? What kind of story? Or maybe I already have a story. So if I already have a story, can I look at all those elements and say, how can I incorporate all that into my story? Can my story take place at that house, at that on that boat, in that car? Can I rewrite it for that? Mm-hmm. And I think if you can do that, and if you're willing to compromise whatever it is to adjust your story to what you have available that you can get for free, I think you'll save a lot. You'll save a ton of money. I mean, I do that pretty much for every film. But it's a process that's kind of like, you know, hey man, you know, let's not spend where we don't need to spend. And, one big expense on low budget films is the location, particularly if you're in LA. You know, when you get out of LA, you can pretty much get a lot more for free. I mean, people are so much more. They're just they're happy to work on a movie because it's exciting, and you know, you're not taking advantage or anything like that. You know, these people are believe me, I shot in like Fresno, and it was like you couldn't tell these people, you had to push people away, like, hey, no, I think we got more than we need, you know, thank you very much. They would just come. I mean, they were coming out in the hundreds to be extras. Uh-huh. And it was actually overwhelming, I think, a lot of times. And but in LA, a whole different story. I mean, you're like, you know, you're shooting at a location, people are being dicks, you know, people are, you know, turning their lawnmowers on, so you'll go over and tell them, you know, to turn it off, and then they'll try to extort money out of you to do it, you know, like, oh, well, I'm not going to turn it off unless you pay me. You know, it's like, oh, okay. I've had people shoot BB guns at me before when we were at we were at a location, and the AD went over and asked politely if we were shooting a scene in an alley, and we didn't have a permit to be shooting there anyway. But one of the ADs asked them, "Hey, would you guys mind just for like 5 minutes? We need to grab this quick shot." So and so, and they just like went totally like psycho, and they're just like, "Fuck you, but we're not fucking dude." Blah, blah, blah. And they got on the roof and they started shooting BB guns at the crew members.
Nice.
I mean, tons of stuff like that, and extorting money out of us. I've had that happen before. I've had, fire departments showing up and threatening to shut us down unless we paid them, immediately would pay them, like, I forget, like some kind of fee to get the permit, but like right on the spot. So it's like, that sort of thing. And,
right.
Cops, neighbors showing up telling us that their generator was causing health problems and stuff, and they wanted money, and it's ridiculous, I guess is what I'm getting at. But so anyway, I guess what I'm going with that is that if you're shooting in LA, it's probably a little harder to get certain locations like that for free. And but since most people that are probably listening to your podcast are outside of LA, I think you really need to utilize what you have. I mean, the movie making world isn't just in Los Angeles, so if you're living in Kansas or Ohio or wherever it is, I mean, there's a lot of great locations with amazing production value that you can get. So you just utilize all that stuff, and I think you'll save big in your budget. I think that's one of the biggest money savers on a low budget film is the availability of stuff you already own. So
now, on the other side of that, what are the things that you absolutely can't be cheap about?
Oh, well, that goes without saying. There's one thing you don't want to be cheap about is the quality of your film, and first and foremost, the actors. Don't be cheap with your actors. Pay for good actors, and you will not be sorry. Pay for a good camera. I mean, look, within reason. I mean, not everybody can shoot on the Alexa, not everybody can shoot on the Red Weapon, but if you have, but now, the film that Sean Baker did, he shot on an iPhone 5S with an anamorphic attachment, using a $9 app or an $8 app, and it got a theatrical release. You know what I mean? I mean, there are other ways to do things. But and then you have the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, $1,000 camera. You have the Alexa has a Mini now. The Alexa Mini just came out. I was looking at that this year at the NAB show, and there are other options. But don't be cheap with your camera. Don't be cheap with your camera. Don't be cheap with your key crew members. And what I mean by that is your DP, incredibly important obviously for the look of your movie. Don't be cheap with lenses. Don't be cheap with the camera. Don't be cheap with lenses. Don't be cheap with the DP. Don't be cheap with production design. Put the money on the screen, at all times. I think if you just go into it and say, look, if I'm where I'm spending money in this budget, I need to make sure that this money is going up on the screen. So, if I'm spending money for silly stuff, see if you can cut that stuff back and redistribute that money into something that the audience is actually going to see on the screen, and that can be anything that I just mentioned, and more, Right. So yeah, I mean, don't be cheap on that stuff. It will show. It definitely will show. And post too. Don't be. Oh my God. Don't be cheap on your post, and don't say I'm going to fix it in post either, because as an owner of a post company for 10 years, it's kind of cost you a hell of a lot more money to fix it in post than it would have been to get it right the first time. And a lot of that has to do with sound. Usually sound is probably the biggest problems that I have coming into my post company. People that just hired the worst sound people known to man, and it's just like a disaster. They usually, so don't be cheap. Man,
right.
It's not good.
Well, that's one of the big things that I think a lot of people don't understand. And I always try to like hit that over the head, as much as possible in terms of sound. People will be like, oh yeah, we've got, this amazing 4K camera and whatever. And it's like, yeah, that doesn't really matter at all. If you don't have good sound, if you don't have a good DP working the camera, if you don't have all the things, you know what I mean? So I always try to make sure that people understand, and I've heard from some people that like the sound guy and the catering guy are sometimes the most important guy on the set, you know.
Don't be cheap. No, I mean, look, don't be cheap with your food too. I mean, you really don't. I mean, you really got to get, you know, these people are coming there and working hard, and you got to take care of as a producer myself, you got to take care of your people. Definitely do not, the whole like, okay, hamburgers for everybody and there's Coke in the thing. That's not a proper diet for, you know, most people. You know what I mean? You have to. You know, spend the money into feeding people and giving people options and to what to eat on set. You know, don't take everybody out to McDonald's. That's not catering. You know what I mean? That's actually quite
that's punishment.
It's punishment. You know, but I was going to say something else there. You were tracking on something there, and I had it in my head, but then I went off on some stupid McDonald's rant. So, what you were talking about.
Well, sound and catering, you know, being
sound and catering, but the DP too. I mean, look, I mean, here's one of the biggest things I see happening too a lot of times is that these cameras have become so amazing and so cheap that oftentimes filmmakers will just say, man, you know, what do I need a DP for? I'll just shoot it myself. You know, we just point and shoot. You know, we'll just use a zoom lens. We'll point and shoot, and it looks good to me. I turn the camera on. You know, the cameras can shoot in with a candle on in the room, and it actually still looks pretty decent. But that's not, you know, that's not cinematography. That's not, you know, real filmmaking. You really want to get somebody in there that's dedicated to that department.
Right.
You know, and not the director, because I've DP'd and directed before, and so it's oh god, it's crazy. But you know, you really want to hire a DP that comes in and can really give you the look that you want and makes the right lens choices and give you something, because it will absolutely show in your movie when you're done. I mean, you can tell. You'll look at a movie and be like, yeah, the movie's not bad, but you know, God, they must have shot it all with the zoom lens, or they just shot it with some cheap lens, or you know, that they just kept moving around. But then you see another film that could be, you know, shot on the same camera, but you're like, my God, this looks fantastic. What did they do? Oh my God, they were using they had this amazing set of prime lenses that they were using, and a really good DP that actually knows how to light. You know, that's one of the things I learned from Mac Ahlberg. Mac was a guy just so those of you who don't know, Mac Ahlberg was he was a DP that I worked with on 2 films, and he shot Reanimator and House and Beverly Hills Cop 3 and all these big Hollywood movies, big horror movies. He's also worked with Stuart Gordon a lot. And anyway, Mac and I were good friends, and he shot two movies. But I remember, for me, and then he shot 2 movies, and we used to talk all the time about cinematography. And he goes all the way back. He was a really older guy. He goes all the way back to Ingmar Bergman. He shot one shot in The Seventh Seal, Ingmar Bergman's movie, and he was so proud about that. And of course, that's like freaking legendary movie to even be involved in that. Anyway, one of the things I learned from him was he always would light. His first film on digital, I think, was with me. I made me mistake, but I think it was with me. And he would light the digital like it was film, and it would look so good. And and it wasn't one of those things where he just would flip on the camera and be like, "Well, we are seeing an image, so yeah, that's great, that'll work." So it was really cool to watch him work on how he still lit the digital like it was film and gave it the right exposure and everything. And the stuff really looked fantastic. But I mean, you know, to get a guy like that is special. But now, I mean, you know, you just got to really make sure that you get somebody on board who's gonna do a really good cinematography job for you. Because I'm telling you, man, it shows so much. You know, when you don't have that, you know.
Right.
And so yeah, spend the money on that.
Now, who are the key when you start working? You know, we're still a little bit in pre-production. Who are the people that you really are kind of like your, you know, who do you go to for like putting together the budget, and who are your key kind of players, and who do you need? Even, you know, talking about, you know, lower budget features, but who would be the people that you needed to kind of like to make up your team aside from the DP, but like people like the assistant director, production manager, or, you know, who?
Sure.
Anyway. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. No, I got you. No, totally got you.
Okay.
Well, that's one of the things, this is another thing that you don't want to be cheap on, and is the management of your crew, or the management of your film. and upper management of your film. You do not want to take on all the responsibilities yourself. Believe me, don't do that. Delegate as much as you possibly can afford, particularly when it comes to having an experienced line producer, particularly when it comes to having an experienced UPM, a unit production manager, particularly when it comes to having I'd say those two. If you have those two, you're already doing pretty good at that point. But I think it's very important for you to install an upper management team. Starting with your line producers. Your line producer is really going to be your buddy.
Can you describe, just for people that don't completely understand, what exactly the line producer's role is on the film?
Sure. Well, a line producer's
just
role,
101.
They're not. I mean, they're not really in a creative role on the film. Yep. They're more in the role of, a line producer is more like the producer that really does all the work, the grit work, like
right.
He's the guy who makes sure everybody's showing up, makes sure things are people are getting hired, people are moving on schedule. Sometimes they deal with the studio, if there is a studio. They're really the central producing element in the film. So when I'm producing a film, I won't produce a film without a freaking line producer, and producing for me is more, I want to be more of a creative producer. So it's more like, I get the idea, the script. I work with the writers. I creatively develop the project. I usually get the money or the funding for it. And then once that happens, one of the first things I do is bring on once we're ready to go into production, one of the first things I do, we'll bring on a line producer. And the line producer will take that, they'll budget it, they'll break down the script. Oftentimes they'll do a schedule. Oftentimes, although sometimes your AD is more involved in that later on, but often the line producer does the initial budget and initial schedule. They'll deal with SAG. They'll deal with all those other elements. So it's important to get an experienced line producer on board, because it'll really help things go, especially on low budget stuff. And then you have other upper management like your AD, I've made plenty of movies without an AD, because usually the line producer's like, oh, we can afford an AD, so I'll be your AD, and I'm like, oh no, right? But to have a dedicated AD is a real godsend, because they really do. They help you run the set, and they allow for you to concentrate on being a director and just directing, and not having to worry about, where are my freaking actors? Why do I have to go find these guys? That's the job of your AD, and the AD to help you stay on schedule and tell people to be quiet when they need to be quiet, and that sort of thing. So those upper management team is super important to install, and get qualified people if you can afford it, if the budget allows. People who have experience in that level of movie making is always a good thing too, because they get low budget. If they get low budget, they understand, like, hey, we can't be spending $200 on a refrigerator. I mean, I did a friend of mine, a well-known director friend of mine, gave me a budget one time, and he's like, you just made this movie for $35,000, and like, this movie that I'm doing, it's not that much more complicated than one they did. That they just gave me a $350,000 budget. And he's like, you think you could look at this for me and see if you could, shave off $100,000 or something like that? So I did it for him. I looked at it, and I was like, my eyes were bleeding. I couldn't believe the stuff that they were paying for in there. And I just went through it with him. I'm like, nope. He was just looking at me like, huh? And I was like, nope. I was like, dude, you have somebody actually budgeted for you to have to go out and buy a $200 refrigerator for your production office. And I'm like, what is that? What movies have this guy been working on? This is low budget movie. We don't have $200 for a refrigerator. So that's ridiculous. I mean, just things like that. It was absolutely ridiculous. So right. I shaved off like $150,000 for him. He was really happy. Yeah, I mean, things like that. It's like, geez. So yeah. So I hope I answered your question there. But
yeah. So when you start directing, how important is it that you can just like kind of do you have kind of that laser focus on, okay, we have to get this scene, then we're moving to that scene, and are you just like visualizing where the camera's going to go, or have you worked it out most of it before you get on the set, or do you kind of do it while you're there?
Well, I think on this, I've done it both ways, but honestly, on the films that I've done, they've been done in such a hurry that I mean, like look, Real Evil, I shot in 6 days. Okay, I mean, and we were doing 17, 15 pages a day at Linda Vista Hospital, East LA, running around this freaking giant hospital, the whole thing. But a 6-day movie, and I think when you're doing something that quickly, a lot of people, and they should, people should be prepared. They want to come in prepared, like, hey, I know every single shot that I'm doing. I'm going to come in, and everybody's going to be like, wow, you're the most amazing prepared director I've ever met, blah, blah, blah. And then they get there, and they're like, and your line producer comes up to you and say, oh, yeah, the location owner says we can't shoot on that floor today. There's another crew coming in, and the deal we made, blah, 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 blah. So you can't shoot there, and you have to shoot on another floor. And then immediately your shot list is gone. It's you just got to crumble it up and throw it away. You're like, well, it ain't gonna fucking work here. So now we got to shoot on a completely different floor, completely different look, and we have to roll with the punch. So now all that prep you did doesn't matter. So I mean, like Real Evil, like I mean, obviously a lot of the films, but particularly Real Evil, I remember because I just was like, you just show up and like, okay, what are we doing? It's like, oh, okay, here's the side. And I literally would look at the schedule and just say, okay, we're shooting that. Okay, great. And then I'd go in there, I'd grab the actors, I'd read over the scene, and I would just start cutting the scene together in my head. Like, okay, but I mean, I have the experience as an editor, so I go in and I already know what it's going to look like. So I'm like, okay, well, we come around the corner and the camera's here, let's shoot it this way, and then boom, we're done. So for me, it's very fast and to the point, and we don't waste footage. I don't overcover. I don't shoot too many takes. I know when I got something, when I don't got something, but that comes from a lot of experience with editing. So, I mean, maybe I can do that kind of stuff. I'm sure other people can do that kind of stuff, but if it's your first project, it's always a good idea to be prepared, I mean, because even if you do the prep work and you come in with a plan, most of the time you can execute it, but not all the time you can. A lot of times you can't shoot that direction, or the sun's in the wrong. We can't shoot that direction how you planned it, so you have to shoot it the other way. Well, that kind of changes your blocking plan or your shot plan, and you just have to be able to roll with it, and
right.
If you can do that, then I think, you're on your way to directing a lot, because it certainly doesn't always turn out the way you had it on paper. Yeah.
Right.
So
what is the key, talking specifically now, since this is going to be for our October Scarathon? I don't know what it's going to be called yet.
Scarathon.
The Scarathon.
The Scarathon.
But what is the key to, horror is very different than every other genre, because you have to really affect the audience. Like, you have to scare the pants off of them, and if you're a successful horror movie, you have, maybe not jump scares, but you have to scare people. What do you think are kind of the key ingredients for creating a successful horror film and making people feel like they got what they wanted to out of it, scaring them or whatever?
Well, yeah, great question. I think that, it comes down to having characters that you really care about, that are compelling, and that people that you want to watch, people that you're gonna actually give a shit if they're coming up against a monster or a threat of some kind. So that definitely number one is your story and your characters. But as far as the monsters and things like that, I mean, look, monsters well, not really monsters, but somebody like a Leatherface or a Jason and Freddy. I mean, those guys have been around for a long time for a reason. They were compelling horror movie villains. I mean, that's why they've lasted this long.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you can come up with a monster or a disease or whatever it may be, that is compelling enough to do a lot of sequels, hopefully, that you should go with it, But I know it's hard now though. It is hard, because there's seems like everything's been done, but
right.
that doesn't mean that you can't do enough. Certainly doesn't mean you can't go out and make your own slasher just because there's been a billion slashers made. You just need to go out and make a slasher that is your own point of view, and is that your own interpretation of what you think a slasher movie should be like, and hopefully that translates into your vision and to your aesthetic and your brand and your unique style of movie making. So I think if you look at it from that point of view, you can't really, you might be able to get inspired and say, hey, I always wanted to make a slasher on a submarine, or I wanted to make a slasher in a treehouse, or whatever the hell it may be, and I have a unique way that I think is going to work for doing it. And that's what you should do, And so there really isn't. I mean, you can study horror movies all you want, and you absolutely should, particularly the classics, particularly. There's so many great movies that have been made in the 80s and the 70s. Certainly today too, but I think more so in the earlier years, But
do you have any specific films that like stick out that kind of really affected you?
Oh yeah, I mean, look, when I made Stuart Gordon was a big influence for me because he was my directing mentor, really. We made a movie together many years ago, and $35,000 movie called Deathbed. Stuart Gordon Presents Deathbed. We were going to do a whole series of these things. Stuart Gordon Presents this and that, and then the whole deal. But the first one we made together, and he was the executive producer, and his name was above the title and the whole deal. And
I just watched a bunch of the outtakes from that because it's on YouTube.
Is it?
Behind the scenes footage of you guys shooting that. It's really kind of cool.
Yeah, that was a fun one. It was fun, but I mean, I learned so much on that film. I mean, it was so. I mean, we shot it for $25,000, and it was posted for 10. And we shot it. This is pre 24p, so like this is before like the cameras were like they are now. This is when we would shoot on digital video. We'd shoot on DV cam, and we would film look it through After Effects plugin or the company in Burbank called FilmLook. They would actually take it and remove the telecine and try to make it look more like it was shot on film. And that's why we were doing a lot of stuff in the early 2000s before the 24p cameras came out. So anyway, we made this film, and I remember before we made the film, Stuart went over to Stuart's house with Mac Allberg, our DP, and he's like, hey, let's watch some horror movies. So we watched one of my favorite classic horror films, which is called The Innocents. And that's a really great one for you to watch. And then I
think I've seen that. What is that? Who's in that?
That is what's the lady's name? That is it's a black and white film. God, my brain just completely went blank. I think it's Deborah or Deborah.
Oh yeah, because she was the one who was in Poltergeist too, right?
So yeah. But
okay, I remember. That was really good.
It's amazing. It's a fantastic film.
It's like a ghost movie, right?
It's a ghost.
Yeah, that was amazing. I remember I saw that last year.
Yeah, it's a classic, man. I mean, that's you can't go wrong.
The Innocents. Yeah. Okay.
And the other film that I think is certainly was very powerful and very that pretty much Stuart Gordon says it was his horror film school is Rosemary's Baby. And Rosemary's Baby, the original Rosemary's Baby. I don't know if they made a TV series or something. Who knows? But
I try to pretend there's not another one.
Yeah, right. Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby was absolutely. I know for Stuart certainly was his film school horror. And I watched it with him when we watched it together, and he was pointing out things, and I was like, I never really thought about it like that. Yeah, I see what you're saying. And so we watched it together and really took it apart, and it was so cool because here I am sitting with freaking Stuart Gordon, breaking apart Rosemary's Baby, and it was amazing. So I think the Rosemary's Baby and The Innocents. I mean, there's a lot of them, but I think those two in particular really certainly stood out. As classics, because we were specifically looking at sort of more that style of filmmaking, sort of like ghost stories and
Well, I think you can learn so much about directing and screenwriting from Rosemary's Baby just by itself.
Oh yeah.
You know, because you can watch it 5 or 6 times, and the second time, once you've seen the whole thing and you watch it again, and you see what's kind of going on, like so much of that movie takes place away from the camera. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's like you're learning all these things from, you know, the neighbors and everything, and they're, you know, all these things that are going on, and you're kind of seeing everything through the point of view of a woman who, you know, seems like she's kind of losing her mind, but it's actually, you know, it's actually something's actually happening to her, but it's just brilliant. That, and, you know, I always like that and Chinatown, you know, Polanski's two movies back to back that were just incredible. Those are like filmmaking schools on their
absolutely,
own.
Absolutely, man. Polanski, I mean, he's a master filmmaker. There's no question about that. I mean, look in The Shining too. The Shining's a great example. There's a really good book actually I've been reading. It's called The Shining: Studies in the Horror Film by Daniel Olson, edited by Daniel Olson, and it's just this big old freaking book about the making of The Shining, and it's just really, really, really interesting if you're interested in that. So there's also one on The Exorcist too, Studies in the Horror Film series. That's really good. I mean, of course, The Exorcist. There's no question that's you know probably one of the best horror films ever made. But I mean, The Shining and one film that I was talking about it last night is a film called The Entity with Barbara Hershey. Is one of the films that scared the freaking shit out of me. It was really, really, really scary. And The Changeling is an amazing, not this Angelina Jolie thing. The Changeling, the classic one with George. The guy who played Patton, for God's sakes. George C. Scott.
Yeah, George.
Anyway, so but he's in this film called The Changeling. Oh man, it's such a great ghost story. Just classy and just gothic, just awesome film. Really amazing film. But I mean, we could go on all day about that. That's a whole nother podcast, I think. But this is so important to do, is to really look at these films and really study these classics. And certainly Hitchcock. Hitchcock is probably one of the best film schools that you could ever have, is to just watch Hitchcock and study Hitchcock. I mean, it goes without saying that right. That's a good one too. So yeah.
So let me let's move slowly, just so I know you don't have a whole lot of time.
No, I'm here for you, so just let me just keep.
Okay, we'll be here for another 4 hours. That's no big deal. Just kidding. So moving into let me ask you something about just the actual creating of creatures. Mm-hmm. Do you go to just like a creature workshop? How is the creatures designed? How does that whole process work? And who owns? I mean, at the end of the day, say for example, you create, you've got a screenplay, you've got this character, you have artists working on it or whatever. Do you own that creature after they create it? Does the company that make it own those rights? Sure. How does that all work?
Well, yeah, it's going to be whoever owns the film. I mean, because you're creating a likeness of a character. So I mean, you're creating say it's I don't know, some kind of weird pumpkin creature or something, pumpkin head, but I mean, some kind of, whoever designs that. I mean, if it's in the film, I mean, whoever owns the rights to the film is going to own that likeness of that creature. I mean, of course, it depends on how the legal paperwork was all worked out too. I mean, maybe they could have licensed the image, but they didn't necessarily own it. You know what I mean? Right. But more than the chances are that whoever made the film, the producers that made the film, are the ones that actually own it and can license it out and make T-shirts and masks and all that sort of thing. Because I've actually had masks made from my film Dark Walker. They made 2 masks out of it, 2 Halloween masks, Dark Walker 1 and Dark Walker 2. Of course, there was never a Dark Walker 2, but they made a mask called Dark Walker 2, and you can look it up. Actually, if you look it up on it's a fantastic mask.
I saw it. I was doing research.
It looks way better than the one in the movie. and it's like man, that should have been the creature in the film. What happened? So. But I mean,
maybe you can just buy one and make part 2 real quick with one that you buy.
Actually, what's funny is I traveled to I think it was Indonesia, and I had I found, you know, I'm always interested. I'm very interested in foreign horror. I love foreign horror films, particularly Asian horror. But I found this film and I picked it up off the shelf, and it was some Indonesian horror movie, and I was looking at it. I was like, oh, it's some kind of weird ghost movie thing. So I flipped over to the back, and I was like, what the fuck? They had bought the mask for my movie Dark Walker and used it in the movie as if that was the creature in their movie. And then on the back cover, there's a picture of the mask, the guy wearing the mask, and you know, they just added a little blood on it or something to make it look a little different and had a different suit. And I was like, what the hell? I mean, yeah. So anyway, I didn't care. I thought it was funny, you know. To me, I don't, whatever, you know, go do it. If they want to do that, it's flattering, you know. But I just thought it was hilarious. I was looking at this movie like, what the fuck? I was in the back. So yeah, I mean, it happens. But in that case, in that particular case, certainly we own the likeness of the mask. The production company that did it. So, but I think as far as how it gets created, that is usually a conversation with the director. The writer can write it one way, but the director might have a different vision of how it looks. So usually the director talks with either the makeup artist, and says, hey, I want it to look a little like this and this and this, and then the makeup artist will usually sometimes they'll do a drawing. They could do a drawing for you. Sometimes you could have an artist do a drawing, and then you just give it to the makeup artist. Say, I want you to do a model of this. I've done it both ways. Sometimes the makeup or the special effects artist would do a mock-up for you, you know, and just say, they'll come in and they do a sculpture of it, and then you can do some adjustments there, and then once you're satisfied with it, then they mold it and they make the prosthetics that they need to make, and you're done, you know, and you have your new character. So that's kind of really the process with it. It's kind of definitely a collaborative process. I mean, if you have something super specific in mind, it's a good idea to hire an artist to draw it for you, to do, even if it's just a simple pencil drawing, just somebody to draw what you have in mind, and hand that to somebody who can execute it as a prosthetic, or whatever, you know, particular effect you're doing. Right. So that's kind of how that whole thing works. Yeah.
Now, would you say that's a lot more effective not effective, but a lot more, economic if you're trying to do a creature? I mean, is there any way you can do CGI or something like that in these low budget movies?
Oh yeah, no, totally. I've done it several times to fix bad makeup. I did it on Ghost Month. I did it on Real Evil. I call it digital makeup, and what it is you know, I had a situation where, you know, we did some makeup tests, and I thought it was going to look better than it did. And then we got to set, and the guy came out, and I was like, what the fuck did they do? And I mean, it looked so bad. I mean, it happens a lot on low budget movies. It happens to me, seems like a lot in my earlier movies. It was like, a lot of times it would be the first time that I had actually even seen the makeup would be when I'm on set. We would hire somebody, and then we just didn't have the money and the budget and the time, and it would just be, they would come out and say, here's the vampire. And I was like, whoa, okay, what Halloween store did we go to, right? And then so I would spend all this energy trying to figure out how I'm going to cover this, how I'm going to not show this person because it looks so ridiculous. So a lot of times they'll be in shadow, or you don't stay on them too long, and it was just like, you know, always like that. But I remember one film, it was like the guy came out, and it was like, what? You know, he looks like Powder, you know, the guy from the Powder, Victor Sound. It just looked terrible. And I was like, it didn't look anything like mine. So I was like, okay, well, let's change. I talked to the DP. I was like, look, you know, I got to shoot this because there's no, we're in the middle of the desert. There's nothing else we can do. So we, you know, I talked to him about changing the lighting up and changing the way we're going to shoot it and how I'm going to shoot it and that sort of thing. And, you know, it helped. And then when I got it into post, because that's kind of one of my specialties, is I gave it to a friend, and I said, hey, you know, let's do some digital makeup on this guy because he looks ridiculous. So I had his face morph into like a skeleton, or, you know, and I had the other girl's face morph into this weird like corpsey looking thing, and so on and so forth. And it worked great. And after that, I was happy because I was like, oh, good, because it looks a little more supernatural now because their face is actually morphing from some one state to another state. So it looked it was funner to use. But yeah, I mean, that's happened. to me several times. I did it on Real Evil too. There was some stuff where it wasn't that the makeup was necessarily I wasn't happy with the makeup on that one. It was more that I thought it could be scarier, so we added the digital makeup onto it to make it even scarier. So yeah, that definitely happens, and you can roll with the punches with what you got to work with, but sometimes you can fix stuff like that in post if you have the know-how.
Right. Do you believe in the idea that it's better not to see the monster? You know, that it's more scary. You know, yes. I'm a huge fan of Jaws. It's one of my favorite movies.
Oh, yeah,
so
totally.
I'm always like, you know, and you know, Spielberg's big influence was a movie called Cat Eyes. You know, and so he was like, well, I don't know how to tell the story. The shark is terrible. You know, so we got to find a way to shoot this movie without showing the shark. So you know, he was talking about how this movie Cat Eyes, you never ever see the creature or the monster, the cat or whatever.
Yeah.
I would think that's another way to kind of like, you know, and even if you have a cool character, to kind of keep it in the dark, you know, until maybe towards the end where you do like a reveal or something like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I'm a firm believer in that. Absolutely. It's a closed door is way scarier than to not know what's behind that door or what's in that darkness, but you know something is there. It is such a great technique, a horror movie making technique, that you know that the mind of the audience just goes crazy, you know, and you know, and I think it's a great those are the kind of films that I prefer to make. You know, I'm totally like more of a classical horror guy. Like I like to make movies like a Rosemary's Baby, or you know, or all the ones I mentioned before. You know, those are the films I like to make. But you know, when you're making something for hire or as a producer for hire, director for hire, oftentimes you don't really have those options. A lot of times you know, the companies or the distributors, they want to see a lot more because it makes a great trailer, you know, or it makes a great piece of art, you know, or that sort of thing, you know, right. Which of course is obviously completely business related, not artistic related. But you know, I mean, you know, it's entertainment business is like that. It's the combination of art and commerce, you know,
right.
And you it's just finding a way to still get your vision on the screen, but understanding that you have to walk down a wavy, you know, a sort of a wavy way of trying to get the commerce out of it, but still trying to get the art out of it at the same time, you know,
right.
And being able to compromise and still get a good movie made at the same time, you know, it's difficult to do, no doubt. I mean, so yeah.
Well, a lot of the people that I've talked to who are, you know, producers, a lot of them are like, you know, we need to package it in such a way that people are going to want to watch it in the first place.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to hide a good movie within a movie that's more commercial, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, I want to watch this. You got to get that initial click. And then it's like, oh, this is actually a good movie. You know, Jaws to me is always the perfect example of that. It's like the perfect, you know, popcorn movie, but inside of it, it's an amazing movie.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, absolutely. And that's a great way to look at it. But I think, I mean, Jaws, of course, was made, you know, 40 years, I think now, right? 40 years ago. And that was such a great time to be making movies back then, you know? But I think with now, I mean, with the distribution being changed so much, what's happening, look, I mean, just happened on a movie I just did. So, you know, I mean, they changed the artwork and the campaign and everything, but a lot of it has to do with, when it comes, especially with digital distribution, it comes down to like, you only get a moment for somebody to be browsing through their Netflix queue or browsing through their Hulu queue to stop and say, hey, that looks kind of cool. Boom. You know, the title's good. If it usually higher up on the list. Sometimes if it's alphabetical, sometimes it's good to have like something that starts with an A or a B or a C or a D, you know, versus something that starts with a Z, you know, kind of thing. Right. I mean, there's little things like that can be taken into consideration, but certainly artwork and trailer are you know, so key to getting people to click on it, you know, to watch it. I mean, and in the case of a company like, say, Hulu, the filmmaker gets paid per click. So every time somebody clicks on that, they get X amount, you know. So it's important to get people to watch it. And if you can, if that means, you know, putting together an amazing piece of art, an amazing trailer, then that's what you got to do, you know.
Right.
So, but the movie still has to stand, on its own too. After you can get people to click on it, but you can't necessarily get them to watch it. So you still got to make a good movie. But if you can have a good trailer, a good movie, good art, you're on your way.
Yeah. It just seems like nowadays, especially with Netflix, if you go into the horror section, it's like they put all this money into the graphic design of the poster, and then you start watching it, and it's like, oh yeah, this is terrible. It's like they just kind of made it. I mean, it must have been bought as part of like a larger package or something, but the movie just completely, there's nothing to it. It's badly shot. So, we've gotten into this world, I think, where it's almost kind of like social media. People are trying to figure out how to get more stars on things. People are trying to just like get things shared around, but the quality a lot of times isn't there. You know what I mean?
Sure. I probably made one or two of those that you clicked. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you'll click on. I mean, look, I click on the stuff, and I'm like, what the fuck, and then it just. I'm to the point. That's why I just like to watch classics, mainly. Yeah. But I mean, totally. It's and they're bought as packages. They're bought as other deals or licensing deals with, God, who knows? There's Vudu and Hulu and Netflix and all these other distributors Amazon and Prime and all that stuff.
Yeah. So one of the things that I try to do kind of with, the podcast is, trying to find that kind of line between, okay, there's people, I talk to a lot of people who are just doing purely, art films that are like, stories of tragedy and things that have, and they're probably going to be really good movies, but they're never going to be able to sell them.
Right.
It's like it's never going to go anywhere. So I'm always kind of like, okay, well, there's got, like the stuff that I write is more, in the horror, monster movie kind of thing. But inside of the movie, there's like stories, characters, and there's like an actual, hopefully, an actual good movie inside of that, Yeah. So I always try to tell people, try to do something. I mean, it's good to make a movie about, you're growing up in a small town and this and that. But you have to connect somehow.
Yeah.
If you can connect with your own audience, good for you, go ahead and do that. And that's great. But, you do have to have something that, think about Netflix or iTunes. What are people going to click on? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's art and commerce because so many people, I know certainly it happens a lot with me when people find out I'm a producer and director or whatever and especially if they're not in the business too, all of a sudden they're like, well, I got a story for you. And then they start telling me their life story about this and that. And for them, it's their own story, but they what they don't understand is everybody's got a story, but not every story makes a good movie,
Mm-hmm.
So, there's plenty of stories out there like, the time that my boyfriend did this, wouldn't that make it a great movie? And you're just kind of like, well, not really. It's deeper than that. It's a lot deeper than that. And a lot of that has to do, it's going to do with certainly the premise, of it has to be compelling, and the characters have to be compelling. The story, the telling has to be compelling. The writing has to be compelling. Before you even get to all this stuff that we're talking about, you need to rewind and go back to your premise, your concept. And then if you have a great premise and a great concept, then you work up a treatment. You work up a treatment, you work out some bugs, you work up the script. Then you got more time to work on that script. You keep working, you keep chiseling that down to the way it needs to be. And if you know kind of what budget level you're going to shoot it on, then you need to limit your locations and limit the amount of people that are in the scenes. And then once you get that all nice and polished up, give it to a few people that don't read scripts for a living and see what they think. And then do one more pass on it. And then at some point around there, then maybe it's time to start, getting the money to do it and put it in, actually greenlight it and put it into production. But I think a lot of people don't spend enough time on the script. And so I'm certainly guilty of that. I'm certainly guilty of films that I've made that were just like, you're just like, the script's not ready. Oh, well, we're shooting next week. Oh, geez. and you try to roll with it like, oh, maybe there's something I can do to make it better. Or, and you're like, nah, not really. Because if it's not on the page to begin with, there's not only so much you can do with it, so, it's you're trying, you don't want to go into production with something that's not ready, but, Yeah, I mean, it's such an important. It's actually one section of this book that I wasn't able to, because it's a whole different book. I mean, I can't write like 25 pages about screenwriting and storytelling and everything. So I just, there's kind of an overview in my book about getting started and how to, combine monsters, stuff to inspire to get it going. And then the rest is about actually making the film, production and distribution and everything. But, the screenwriting aspect of it it's a whole other book in itself. But if you're a starting filmmaker and you really want to get some really good books on screenwriting, there's so many out there. Certainly Story by Robert McKee is probably one of the best ones. There's an endless amount of them that have been written. I wouldn't say all of them are good, but I would say there's certainly some that have been written on specifically on horror. I think the one guy wrote one on genre filmmaking. I can't remember the name of the author, but just take a look at what's out there, and you'll see. But what I find that's even better than that. I mean, it's great to read it, and if you understand it, great. If not, read more. But one of the best things to do is to actually read screenplays, to get horror screenplays, if that's the genre of your choice. Certainly there's a lot of them available out there, excuse me, online, is to get them and to read them and to study them, right, and look at the formatting, look at the way that it's written, and really study the screenplay page. I mean, I'm a writer myself, so I have an extensive collection of screenplays. I mean, I have a whole shelf. I mean, just like literally like 1,000 screenplays that are on my shelf, and I just go over when I want to and say, oh, I'm going to read the script for U-Turn, or I'm going to read the script for Knocked Up, or whatever it is. I mean, those aren't horror films, but I mean, I have the script for Hellraiser, and I have the script for House on Haunted Hill with script notes, that sort of
right.
thing. And that's really, I think, one of the most powerful ways to learn how to write, is to read great other writers that are really great and study them,
Right. Yeah, I think it's kind of like through osmosis in a way. I remember I used to read the Aliens screenplay all the time, and
that's great. Yeah.
And it was just like I would read it over and over and over again, and then when I would go back and actually watch the film, I would remember kind of how it looked, on the page, and how it kind of came to life, and you really realize how kind of succinct it has to all be. Screenplays have to be completely just tight. There can't be one moment in it that doesn't have a reason, and if you read those screenplays, especially the classics, or even just good movies, I think you kind of just see you don't have, it's not like a book where you have a lot of pages that, probably could be left out.
Sure. Yeah.
But, let me ask you one more thing about that, because a lot of screenwriters listen to this. The companies where you've worked for, the production houses, do they regularly, I mean, where are they getting their writers and screenplays from? I mean, do you find that they're mostly people that are in town, or do they ever just find people outside of town that submit screenplays and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, sure. I'd be happy to answer. But before I do, I wanted to add to your Aliens comment on the screenplay. There's actually a really cool book, if you haven't checked it out. It's called, and Dan O'Bannon wrote it. It's Dan O'Bannon's Guide to Screenplay Structure.
Oh, really? I don't think I've ever seen that.
Yeah, he actually wrote a book on his sort of methodology to how he writes, particularly to Alien. And he has a very, it's an interesting read. He's a very unorthodox way of doing it, but I think if for screenwriters that are reading this, and certainly for me as a screenwriter myself, I found it really really insightful to see how somebody like Dan O'Bannon, who of course wrote Alien, it works in Night of the Living Dead, or I'm sorry, Night of the Living Dead, Return of the Living Dead. He wrote Return of the Living Dead too, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really it's a cool read. So you should check it out if you have the ability to do it. But certainly, I think most filmmakers would agree that one of the best ways to learn how to make movies is certainly to watch movies, but not watch them just to watch them. Watch them once just to watch them, but watch it twice to study it, and to really break it apart. And to read screenplays. I'm always amazed how many people I meet and I asked him like, what, do you have a screenplay? Like, oh no, I don't have any. Wait, you want to be a screenwriter and you don't have any screenplays in your house? You know, you don't read screenplays? Well, no,
Right.
just my own. You know, like, oh, okay. You know, so are you gonna make your own music but only listen to your own music? You know, it doesn't make any sense. You have to, if you're a screenwriter and you don't have like either a folder on your computer with a bunch of PDF screenplays that you bought, you know, to read and study, or actually have a lot of screenplays in your own personal library, or if you don't even have a personal library and you're a writer or a screenwriter, you know, it's like, you know, yeah, it might be kind of a good idea to do something like that. I mean, Newmarket Press is probably one of the most well-known publishers that publish screenplays, and I would highly recommend checking out that particular publishing company. They publish a lot of that stuff, but there's a lot of that out there that you should get out and study. So anyway, with that said, as far as the transition just into the screenwriting question, and I've hired plenty of writers as a producer.
Right.
Certainly, I hired them for a number of reasons, but usually sometimes it's because I just don't have the time to write it myself, because as a writer myself, usually I want to write it myself, but I'm kind of like, oh God, I just don't have the time, and I need to spend the time on the producing and getting money to even make the thing and that sort of thing. So oftentimes I'll hire a screenwriter, and it's usually it just depends, you know, what it is, but usually on the low budget level of things, scripts are written as work for hire, which means that the writer actually doesn't own it. You're writing it for me as a job. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you're getting paid X amount. You know, it could be as ridiculously, embarrassingly cheap as $1,500 to $4,000 or $5,000 or $10,000. You know, depending on what the budget is. Usually a screenwriter gets somewhere around like 2% of the budget for their script. I'm just saying in general. It's just throwing that around. So 2%. So if you're making $100,000 movie, the writer may have got $2,000, may have got $4,000. Depending on, you know, how generous the producer is. Me particularly, I'm kind of generous because I'm a writer myself, and I know how hard it is to do that, to write anything and then to have to turn it over, you know. But sometimes you have to do that in order to get it made. Especially if you're an unproduced writer, you know, sometimes that's the best way to get started. I mean, you know, if you give me a script and you have no credits at all, and I'm like, well, hey, I can make this movie. We're going to make it for $100,000, but I can get it made. Yeah, you know, you're going to get paid a little bit, but, you know, the production company takes it over. They pay you. They own the script, but we actually make the film, and then that helps you get another gig after, you know, that sort of thing.
Right.
But you know, it just depends. You know, I mean, with the low budget stuff, you know, usually, yeah, that's usually kind of a standard case where it's 2% of the budget, or and usually the writer, it's a work for hire kind of situation, you know.
Right.
And I've hired plenty of different writers, all different kinds of writers, and a lot of times they use alias. Sometimes they'll use aliases for all kinds of reasons. Other times they who knows, you know, what it is, but and you know, they usually have a very short amount of time to write it. So usually I tend to hire writers that can write quickly, but with quality, you know. So I mean, like, for instance, I hired a writer not too long ago, and I gave him I gave him a week to work up a treatment, and then we worked out notes on the treatment. I think he gave him 3 or 4 weeks to write the first draft. So I think he did it in 3. But I've had people do it in 2. You know, and then you know, and then we would certainly do several other drafts after that. But the first draft, you know, because once you work out the initial story and the treatment and stuff, the drafting part of it can come a little quicker. But and that's kind of how that process works, at least with some of the lower budgeted stuff. At the studio level, it's a whole different ballgame, a whole different. Just ignore everything I said, because it's a whole. You're dealing with like executives, and you're dealing with a whole different group of people. So I'm speaking to you just as an independent filmmaker that has hired people to write films that have been made in the under $200,000 range, in what a typical scenario may be like. So that's what I'm telling you here. So it's not. So if you're a screenwriter, you're like, oh fuck, I'm gonna have to look for $2,000 for the rest of my life. I'm gonna be broke, and how my kid's gonna eat, that sort of thing. Now, that's not the case. But if you're looking to get at something that you have that's already, you know, that you think could be good for a low budget situation, yeah, I mean, you could do something like that. So,
right.
But yeah, I mean, I get people submitting all the time for scripts. Oftentimes they're just ridiculously too complicated, or there's just way too many locations and way too many characters to execute. That's usually the case. But sometimes people come in with stuff that's just really well written, well executed, and it's simple. And those are the ones that I tend to like as far as making on a lower budgeted level.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but if you have something that you're, as a writer though, if you have something that you worked on for like 12 years and it's like your baby, don't sell it to some producer for $2,000. You know what I mean? I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you. I mean, I would, if you gave it to me and I'm like, man, this is amazing. And I was like, you should be, I was like, dude, I can't give you $2,000 for this. No. I mean, look, I mean, just if you have something that's like really your baby, I mean, don't. Hang on to it and don't just let it go for pennies unless you're part of the project. Oftentimes I've made deals with writers too, where oftentimes they were producers. So they wrote it. Mm-hmm. And the deal was that they're involved in the percentage of any profits, if any. Usually there's none because movies barely make money. But they're more involved in the financial pie, if there is a pie. But often, if somebody's always eating the pie and there is no pie, and there oftentimes there's no crumbs either from the pie.
Right.
So, but it's sometimes you can make arrangements like that. Sometimes it's 2% plus a percentage on the back end.
Mm-hmm. And you think it's a good way for people that are just like trying to get their start and build up some credits?
I think it's a great way to start. Yeah. I mean, I think it's better if you're the writer and director, because I think like if you're just the writer and you give it to another director, you got to remember, this is an interpretive art form here we're talking.
Yeah.
About. So
mm-hmm.
It starts with you. It starts with the idea. It starts with the writer. It's in that thing, but it ends in the editing room. With mm-hmm. some guy like me that's going, what the hell is all this dialogue? Let's cut this out, It ends with the editor. It ends with the director at the end cutting your script down. So
like, let's get rid of this whole Indianapolis speech. Totally. This is crap.
Tell me about it, man. You see the shit that I cut out of movies. I mean, scenes that they shot and you're just like, this scene is so freaking boring. Let's just cut it out. We cut the whole thing out and move on. But I think if you have the knack for it, if you have the personality to be a director and you have a script you're really passionate about, you should consider doing it yourself, being the writer director, or if you do get a production company involved with it, that you are the direct, the terms are that you get to direct it, even though that scares producers. Honestly, it scares them a little bit, because especially on this level of filmmaking, because, to have a first time anybody when you need to pull stuff off in 8 to 10 days is can make the producer very nervous, because it's like, does he know what he's doing? That's a director behind the camera, that sort of thing. But if that's the case, hey, kickstart it yourself or something. Go out and make it yourself. I've always encouraged people like, hey man, look, if you got your own script and it's great and you think it's something you can do for a low budget, there's nothing that says you can't go out and either what you could do, Kickstarter or whatever, it's a crapshoot with that too. But, you could try to do some kickstarting. You could hopefully you're financially well off yourself. Maybe you could, sell your ridiculous comic book collection because you're in your 50s now, and maybe you don't need to have that anymore, and sell your comic book collection like I think Kevin Smith did to make Clerks, and raise some money, and say, hey, look, I have $30,000 that I can put into something, and mm-hmm. Instead of that midlife crisis car, maybe I invest in my movie, and you go out and do it yourself, and maybe you produce it yourself and you direct it yourself and you do it. And I think for me, that's always been the best way to do it, is to kind of carve your own path with it. Mm-hmm. Right. Because certainly it's a little bit more sure that it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But don't go into it without at least doing your due diligence and research and being about how to make movies. I mean, certainly, you can read the books, you can read, all you want, but there's nothing like experience, and and you will get experience doing it yourself that way, believe me. So yeah, man, I mean, I don't know. I think that's a good way to start. Yeah, so.
Well, can we move into post-production? Because I know that's your big thing, and I know you guys talked about it a lot on Dave Bullis's podcast, so I recommend everybody check that out too. But I wanted to talk to you about post-production and what are the important aspects of that, and what do people need to plan for when they're beginning. One of the things you guys even talked about was you have to have enough budget to do your post-production, and you can't just put it all into shooting it and then expect to just like do the post-production aspect of it without any money. I think people get kind of stuck with that, that they do everything in production and then they get to post-production and they've run out of budget.
Oh yeah, totally. No, I mean, yeah, I can totally. So we're going to talk about post now, which is awesome. Yeah, totally. Like one of my it's where I kind of my strong point, where I started out certainly in the industry as an editor. Now, where would you like to
wherever you think is the best, just to kind of give people an idea of what they need to understand,
Gotcha. Well, I think before you get involved in when you're ready to start shooting your film in pre-production, you need to start thinking about post-production in pre-production, because everything you kind of almost have to kind of work backwards. I mean, certainly even from distribution. I always say start from where you want this film to end up. So if you're like, okay, I want this film to be theatrical. Okay, well, if you want it to be theatrical, you probably shouldn't be shooting on your phone. You might want to, even though that's happened, don't get me wrong, but if you really want it to be a theatrical release, or even have the possibility of being a theatrical release, you want to start deciding on your cameras, and say, okay, well, maybe we should shoot with the Alexa. Maybe we need to shoot at 4K so we can get a 4K DCP that we can take out to screen in theaters, and so on and so forth. So you start thinking about your deliverables, like, okay, we want to be able to sell this foreign. We want to be able to, do a full delivery on this to everywhere. Well, okay. That's great. I'm glad you're thinking about that in pre-production, because what you're going to need to do is like I said, you're going to think about what camera you're shooting on. You got to start thinking about how you're going to, because you need to budget that stuff out. Like, hey, we're going to need M&E tracks. We're going to need 5.1. We're going to need 5.1 M&Es. We're going to need to do the stems. We're going to need to do closed captioning. By the way, you can't even get a movie on iTunes unless it's closed captioned. And so on and so forth. So, I mean, you really need to start thinking about that kind of stuff early on and budget for it, because by the time you get to post, people are like, what? You mean I got to have that? How much is that going to cost? Oh, I got to do 5.1 M&E? What the hell is that? I got to do what? I got to do QC. What the hell is QC? That sort of thing. And how much does that cost? Oh my God, that costs like $500 to do that. And all of a sudden you're just like, you're overwhelmed, and then your movie doesn't get finished because you couldn't sell it because you weren't able to deliver it. Mm-hmm. And if you're not able to deliver your movie, you're in trouble, man. I mean, you're going to spend, because these guys aren't going to wait around forever. When you get a distributor on the hook and they say, we like your film, it was really good, we want to make a deal with you, blah, blah, blah. And then you start looking at the contract and you're like, oh my God, I can't deliver all this stuff. I didn't shoot on-set stills, or I didn't do this, or it doesn't pass QC because it has to, normally has to pass a QC process. And you have all these post issues, with God knows what, and they're like, hey, look, we're interested in your film, but if you can't pass QC, and if you can't deliver what the contract says that we need as a delivery, we can't take your film. I've seen that happen several times to people. Their movie's just undeliverable. It's not that it was bad; it just they couldn't deliver it the way the distributor wanted it, so the distributor had to pass on it.
What would cause a film not to pass QC?
Oh, so many things. Actually, it's one of the things I have a really good chapter, probably one of the only ones that are in print, I think, in a book about the whole sort of the process of delivery, mastering and delivery and all that stuff. And I have a little bit in there on QC. And QC, for those of you who don't know, is quality control. And it's a process. it's a very subjective process. And what happens is your movie goes to a lab. Let's just say I don't want to mention any labs because talk to me after this. No, you say your movie goes to a lab and for a QCing process. What they do is they take the master and they run it through the ringer. They look at the video, the levels, the gamma, all these things they run through a machine and they run it through this machine. This machine will say, oh, this movie's out of the gamma does this, and there's dead pixels on these shots, and there's this shot is out of focus, or there's a C stand in the shot. I mean literally stuff like that. Like there's a C stand in the shot. You have to that's a QC flag, or a dead pixel, which can happen, on digital cameras sometimes. It's just a dead pixel in the middle. Very hard, to get rid of those. Sometimes, if you're shooting on film, it could be film scratches, all the way to stuff being out of focus and so on and so forth. And it's graded by a number system. So you have like a 1, 2, and a 3. Like a 1 is like kind of they're just letting you know kind of thing. Won't cause you to pass. 2 is kind of like not really enough to it's bad, but it's not that bad. 3 is like absolutely you have to fix this kind of thing, So it's graded on a scale. And in my book, I put in I think 2 examples of what a QC report actually looks like, and ones that have passed and ones that have failed. And they'll pick out all kinds of stuff. Audio, particularly audio, they'll pick out things like the Foley is off, or she has a bracelet on, but we're not hearing the bracelet, on the M&E track. I mean, stuff like that. Lip smacks, I mean, just the most ridiculous stuff that you're just like, oh my God, what is wrong with these people? But it's a very real and a very important part of the selling of the film process. So, and it's something.
So it's like if there's just too many things in there, then you fail the QC test, okay.
There's only 2 outcomes to QC:
okay.
Pass and fail. There's no in between. If you fail, forget about your distribution. I mean, you have a chance to fix it. They'll say, okay, well, it failed, so you need to fix all this stuff. But if you go back and like, I can't fix it. There's no way I can fix it. Well, you're probably not going to get the distribution deal that you tried to get, because no distributor wants to take a movie that's failed QC. And certainly for TV, for television, like my film Ghost Month premiered on NBC Universal's Chiller TV. It's a main television network. So the QC, but it had to pass a QC, and it did, because I shot it on 35 and I did the post, so I made sure it passed. But it had its share fair problems, but I was able to fix it, and they weren't too horrible. But is
there any way to test it yourself before you send it over, or are there ways? Not
really, because it's subjective. Because you're giving it to a lab that's got some dude in there that's getting $8 an hour to sit there and run it through a machine and watch it, and to say, oh yeah, it's the levels, or there's really not a 100% way to say, yeah, this is definitely going to pass QC, because I did it myself. But you certainly can look out for things and I can tell you firsthand, if your shot is ridiculously out of focus, it's probably going to get flagged. If you have a C stand in the shot, it's going to get flagged. If you're one of the most common things is the levels are falling out of the legal, so the legal zone for levels. But oftentimes that can be fixed with filters in Final Cut or Adobe Premiere and stuff. Like, you can add a filter to that, and you can get the levels back into what they call a legalized area. And titles are out of title safe zones, that sort of thing. So there are things, if you know a lot about post production, that you can look out for. Like, I can look at a movie and tell you if it'll pass QC usually. From visually, audio not as much, because they really have to listen to it and really QC like the M&E tracks and make sure there's footsteps filled in, and all of there's Foley where it needs to be, that sort of thing. There are different labs, or sometimes I've had stuff that they've told me to fix, and I went back and said, yeah, I fixed it, no problem, and I didn't fix it. I was just bullshitting them. And then they passed it, and it happened It happened like 2 or 3 times too, because I'm like, yeah, oh yeah, I fixed that. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that pixel that you said, yeah, I totally fixed it. And then they come back and like, oh, okay, great. And then they pass. So that's why I'm saying it's a very subjective process. You can have it pass one QC house in the United States, and then you can give it to a foreign place that QCs it, and you'll get a whole other list of problems that they did pay. So it's a really weird, a very frustrating process for a filmmaker to get past that stage. But I will say it is one of the big hangups for people, especially on low budget movies, because you don't really a lot of times have the money to get it fixed. So that's one thing you really need to be careful with and watch out for.
Okay. So can you walk us through the process? Okay, just editing the film and everything, like what the process is. Are you typically editing as they're shooting, or can you give me just an idea of how that all comes together?
Yeah, a quick idea, but I mean, typically no, I'm not really editing as they're shooting. It depends. I mean, if I'm full moon, sometimes we used to do that when we were making Puppet Master 10 and stuff like that. Sometimes I would be editing as they're shooting. They would give me, because I was just the editor. They would Charlie Band would give me the material on like a daily basis, so I'd be cutting as we're going and that sort of thing. So that can certainly happen. But sometimes if it's your own picture, you're not really thinking about that right now. You're probably just more concerned about getting it shot. So usually what happens is after you get it all shot, then you either, if you're not editing it yourself, you'll meet with an editor and excuse me, you'll go over with the editor, kind of what's going on. The editor will, of course, get the script, usually what's called a line script that they had, if you had a script supervisor on set, and they'll get an idea of what the coverage is like and what takes you like, that sort of thing. If you even had one. A lot of times with low budgets, they don't even have a script supervisor. And then it's just pretty much up to the editor at that point. You have a couple conversations with the director, and you start cutting away. And then you just goes through a process of an assembly and a director's cut and a producer's cut oftentimes, until you get it locked. And then once you get it locked, and then you head on to sound from that point forward. But the editing process though, one thing I will tell you, and this is another area that you really should, spend the money in, is, look, if you're a great editor yourself, fine. But if you're just, a guy that cut a few commercials together, or a few car commercials together, a Doritos commercial, is not a feature film editor. You really got to look at who you're hiring as an editor, because editing is so important to the process. And I've edited so many feature films, man. I mean, over, I think I'm like 100 and something now feature films. A lot of them are just blah, but I mean the one, I edited for Sci-Fi Channel, and edited for people, and it's just such an important process.
Right.
Cheat out of the editor. Hire somebody that has feature film experience, not experience.
I'm losing you a little bit. I can't really hear you. You're dropping out a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Are you going through a tunnel?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
That's better. So what I was saying is, spend money on a experienced editor, because in the long run, it'll really save you. It's just like having a really good DP or anything else, because a really good editor can make or break your movie. I can cut a scene 18 different ways and get completely different meanings every time in the scene. Mm-hmm. But so that's what I'm saying. I mean, an editor is just important. It's not just a matter of slinging together a bunch of coverage. That's not editing. Editing is a craft like anything else, just like, cinematography, just like production design. And it's the end part of your film here, so it's everything. It's timing. It's performance. It's whether or not to show the knife yet, or to show it at the end. If I cut a scene and I show you the knife too early, the scare's gone. The scare might be gone. But if I show it at the end, the scene could play a completely different way. So that's an enormous amount of power to have over a movie as an editor. So that's why I'm just really, saying like, hey, it is an important part of the process, and really get somebody that knows how to cut feature films together. And if it's yourself, great. But if it's just somebody with no experience, I would really advise against it. So anyway, you edit after you get that done, and you beautiful edited thing together, then you can move on. Then you lock the picture, which means no further changes to the picture. And then that can be given at that point over to the sound department, and the sound starts, and that's also when the composer usually starts, and CGI and everything else starts at that point, titling and all that.
Right.
So,
are you able to have like composers for these? I mean, is that something that fits within the budget?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my wife's a composer, so I'm lucky.
Okay. That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, she plays guitar for Blue Man Group, and she's also a composer, film composer. She scored a lot of my films and everything too. So
that's convenient.
Yeah, definitely a convenient relationship, right? So yes, and let me tell you here too, because this is also extremely important. One of the things that's that seems to be like a plague these days, because that's what
Danny, you there? I can't hear you. Let me try to call him back.
Hello.
Hey, we're back. There we go. Just keep going.
Okay. You want me to call you back? Is it okay? Is the connection okay?
Yeah, the connection's good. You were saying one of the plagues.
Okay, maybe plague's not a good word, but one of the real mistakes I think that I see some filmmakers doing these days is the use of music libraries in place of an original film score. Now I'm not talking about trailers and I mean, look, I mean, if you trailers or documentaries or whatever, and you need to pull a piece out or a song out or whatever. Okay, fine. Because libraries can have their uses for certain things, for certain, corporate videos or commercials, and that's great. But this is, of course, my personal opinion on the matter. But for me as a filmmaker, like, I would never pull out music from a library. Absolutely not. And there's a reason for that. I mean, a film is an original piece of work. I mean, it's like a painting, I mean, you want to have an original composer come in and do an original score to your film, because your film is unique. It flows a certain way. It's edited a certain way. It has a certain aesthetic. It has a certain sound to it. It has certain instrumentation that you want to enhance the performance of the characters. You're not going to get that from a library. You know what you're going to get from a library? You're going to get the same cue that 19,000 other people just used in a car commercial and a feature film and something else that people just are using over and over again. So it's really to your advantage as a filmmaker to hire a composer on your feature film and get an original score. The audience will love you for it. You'll love yourself for it. And there are lots, and it's not expensive. Lots of composers out there that are hungry, looking for work, that'll even do it for experience, just to work on it sometimes, I mean, you just need to find those people and reach out to those people to do an original score to your movie. It is absolutely worth it, and do not cheap out on the music, because, I mean, even George Lucas will tell you that sound is 50% of the movie. Mm-hmm. So, and it's true, because, we see with our eyes, we smell with our nose, but we hear with our ears. But since we're not in smell-o-vision, we're seeing and hearing. So it's like kind of a 50-50 experience. So sound and music and all that stuff is such an important part to your film. Don't cheap out on it.
Do you use a temp track when you're editing, or what?
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, totally. Look, if you're editing, and you're using an Alan Silvestri temp track because you just want to give the composer an idea or something, yeah, that's fine. But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, you have to. Certainly, a temp tracking is very common. Yeah, people are just putting in music just to get an idea, when they're cutting, but the end result is something completely different. So that's actually a good way to do it. But when I have a whole chapter in the book about the music of horror films, and I interview some amazing composers, in there. I mean, John Ottman, John Debney, I mean, just, some great folks. And I really get into it with them about that stuff. And I think it's very insightful for you for the readers to read that chapter on music and sound. It's really a good one. It's actually I think it is my favorite chapter in the book. It's actually quite extensive too, the interviews. Right. But music though too. I mean, it's there are just so many elements to it, between instrumentation and the overall feel of scenes and everything. Music really helps the audience it really helps direct the audience to the emotions that they want to feel in a scene. And for you to just like pull something out of your hat, you know, it's a shame. It's too bad, you know, and I think that you can really improve yourself if you hire a composer. So
do they come in as the, you know, you lock the picture, it goes over to sound post, they're doing the, you know, Foley and the designing and everything. Does the soundtrack come in at the very, you know, after all that happens, or is that kind of going on at the same time?
Well, sometimes you can get, depending on your relationship with the composer, sometimes you can get
if you're married to the composer.
No, but if you're like, before you even like on Real Evil, like I had the music ideas before we even started. I had them, you know, like I said, hey, you know, I want this kind of style, and it was able to start kind of getting going on the music early on, before we even shot the film. So I mean, I think sometimes you can, if you have that kind of a relationship with a composer, you can say, hey, I'm kind of thinking I want to do this kind of thing, you know, maybe start coming up with some ideas, and then they can start doing that early on. But what normally happens is this: you shoot the movie, you cut the movie, you lock the movie, and then it goes to the sound stage, not an actual sound stage. I mean the sound editing process, the music process stage of production, and what the director should be doing at this point, after the picture is locked, is you need to sit with usually three different kinds of people. Usually your sound designer, your composer, and your CGI artist, if you have one, which a lot of times you don't, but sometimes you do, and you'll need to sit with them and talk about the special effects shots that you need to do. But more commonly, you'll probably, on low budget, it's probably going to be just your sound and your music. So what you're going to do is you're going to sit with you're going to hire a sound designer and a sound editor, and you're gonna do what's called spotting. You're gonna spot with these guys. You're gonna watch the film from beginning to end, and you're gonna give them notes. You're gonna say, this scene, I would like to hear metallic sounds coming from there, and I want more of a bobcat growl on the monster, and I want this, and blah 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 blah. And they'll just make notes as you're going along, and believe me, they'll thank you for it, because it helps them, saves them time, saves you time. Everybody's on the same page of what kind of sound design you're looking for. Then you do a spotting session with your composer, and it's the same sort of process, but you're talking more in terms of music. You're saying, I'm thinking more like, depending on how detailed they get with you and what your understanding is of music and how it works, the conversations can be very detailed, and they can be very generic. They can be very much like, well, I don't know, I think there should be some music here, but I'm not really sure what. And then the composer will say, okay, cool, I'll do something there. But I have a little bit of a music background. So when I talk to my wife about composer, we have like a nice conversation about, like, I don't know about, the horns and maybe the D minor is better, or maybe some piano work here, that sort of thing. So it's a little bit more detailed. Mm-hmm. But I think in general, when you're talking to a composer, it's better to give them the emotion that you're going for in the scene. Like, this scene is sad. This scene is scary. This scene is a really big moment, and I don't want to hear any music at all until we see the knife at the end. That kind of direction for your composer. And again, the composer will thank you for this. And they have a clear idea, a clear direction of where they're going with that. And then the same thing happens with the CGI. You do the same thing. You sit with them and you spot it, and you tell them what kind of special effects you want. I want it to glow, and I want the guy's face to morph into a lizard or whatever it is. And I want it to be green and that sort of thing. And that's really kind of in a really quick nutshell the entire part 4 of my book. That's kind of what you got to do there at that stage,
right?
Are
there any typical mistakes that you see? Like, if people want CGI in a scene, are there any things they need to make sure they have for you to do that?
Absolutely. That's the last chapter, actually. It's pitfalls of post-production, and there are many. But to answer that specifically. Yes, oftentimes, like, I did a lot of movies that I've had come in had one of their biggest problems is shooting the wrong plates. Like they think that, we'll just remove the background and we'll just throw some green shit behind them, and then we'll take it out in After Effects, and it'll be great. And then they come in, and then I mean, I've had that stuff come into me, and it's like, yeah, just take out the background. I'm like, guys, you didn't light the freaking green screen right. You just put some green cloth behind the guy. You got him too close to it. He's casting a shadow on it. How am I supposed to pull him out of that background and make it look believable? You know what I mean? Like that sort of stuff. That happens all the freaking time. Or, you know, somebody will be in front of a green screen, but they're wearing like a green shirt. You know, it's like, who shot this, right? You know? And you know, it happens, man. I mean, you know, just little things like that. You know, there's plenty of books out there on green screen too, if you're doing green screen work. But that's one of the big things I see coming in is people that want to do green screen work on the low budget level, but they don't shoot it right. They shoot it very. They think just because it's green, that's good enough, and it's not. Believe me, there is a very special way to do that to get it looking good. And you know, and it can be a million other things too. Bad sound is also a very common thing. You know, you just had bad sound on set and nobody seemed to notice, and now it's a big problem. Or if there's voiceover, make sure you get it recorded on set if you can, because the last thing you want to do is to be having to bring back actors, and especially if they have to do ADR and replace their dialogue over badly recorded dialogue. It looks terrible, first of all, most of the time, and oftentimes you lose the original meaning of the performance. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
I mean, I think it was Kubrick that didn't do ADR at all because he was like totally opposed against it. At least I think that's what I heard from Full Metal Jacket or something like that. They wouldn't do ADR or something like that.
Right.
And you know, and I'm with him with that. I mean, it's like, man, you know, ADR sucks because it's like, you know, there's a magic that happens on set, and when you have to replace it in the studio, it's just not, it's not the same. For me, it's not the same. Yeah. So get it on that can. You know? So yeah. So I mean, there's other things. You know, slating is a big issue a lot of times for, you know, people that just horrible people that just don't slate. You know, like, what's wrong with you? Slating is just inexcusable. You really need to do a good slate for the editor and for your own sanity. And there are apps on the iPad and the iPhone. I can't remember. I mentioned them in my book, but I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. I think it's called Movie Slate or something like that. Just look at on the iTunes store, and I think it's like $20 or something. And it's amazing. You know, it's just an iPad or an iPhone app, and you just put the iPhone in front of the camera, and you just click a little button, and it goes click like that, and it slates it for you. You know, right. So it's a good high tech way to do all that stuff. You know,
now when you're dealing with these higher end cameras, do you have a high end audio track that's going into the camera that you've got, or are you still just having to sync all the audio?
Well, what I do is I make sure that my sound people are doing two things. That one, they're running a line into the camera, okay? So you're getting it recorded on camera, but they're also running it to a backup, a high quality backup that is usually running into a recorder that can record it at a way higher quality than the camera actually can. Right. So usually the audio sounds better on their recorder than it does on the camera. So what I do is I actually resync the film. So I bring it in. I use the audio that they recorded on their high end recorder at higher bit rate, higher like I usually do like 96K 24-bit recording, super high quality audio, right? And then I resync it with the material that way. Now, is that the most common way? No, most people just take it right off the camera, and oftentimes that's fine. So, you know, but if you take it right off the camera, it's always a good idea to have a backup too, you know, because if the audio's fucked up on the camera, I had a movie that came in one time, and I kid you not, 50% of the movie, they thought they had the audio on the camera, and it was all distorted because somebody didn't set the level right going into the camera. So he was monitoring it okay through his mixer, but the output from his mixer going into the camera was set at a different level. So it was distorted. Everything that was being recorded on the camera was distorted, and there was no backup. So everything that came in, it was like that the whole time. And they were totally devastated, totally pissed, fired the fucking sound guy. And they had to ADR like 50% of the movie, and it looks terrible. It's dreadful. Yeah. And because you couldn't even hear what the guy said to begin with. because it was distorted. You couldn't even tell what he was saying. You had to look at his lips, you know, versus like normally ADR, at least if it's bad audio, you can kind of hear what they said to match it. Right. So yeah, I mean, that's a big problem. Sound is a big problem in post. So pay a lot of attention to that, and you won't be sorry.
Do you typically have a lav on every actor and the boom, or how is that like set up usually?
You know, one of the most difficult sound shows that I directed was Real Evil, and the reason for that is like they're swinging around 360, running down halls. It was actually one of the most difficult technically to shoot. And a lot of that has to do with the camera, the sound, the audio. And I was hiding in drawers and behind walls and laying on the ground. I mean, I was hiding all over the place. But sound on that was very difficult. And I knew it because I have the post experience. So I told the producers, and so I said, hey, man, you got to hire this sound guy, this one sound guy I've used before. And I said, you know, he's got the gear. We need to lab all these actors. You need to run the audio into this mixer and all this stuff. Otherwise, we're gonna have a clusterfuck in post sound wise. Luckily, they listened to me, and Real Evil. When everybody's got a lab on. They're running around. The sound guys ducking around in rooms and whatnot, and that's kind of how that was made. But usually it's just a few labs and a boom, you know, and that's plenty for what you're doing, but. You know, when you're found footage is a little harder to make because you're not shooting in just one direction, and then you can move the cast and crew and video village all the time. You know, you're swinging around 360, you know, seeing everything. So, and it was also a lighting challenge too. So yeah, labs is always a good idea.
In that, do you have to light the whole thing? Like, I mean, do you light everything and just like start shooting, or do you actually light individual shots?
Well, since we were shooting in a practical location, an actual abandoned hospital, we couldn't light from above. You know, the movie Wreck, that whole house, that whole building that they're in, that was a soundstage. That thing, that's like a 2-story soundstage that they lit from above, so they could swing around no problem because they had lights already rigged. Now, in our case, we're shooting in practical locations, so we had to hide the lights a lot of times. And then there was some story element, like there was this film crew shooting, so they left the lights around and so on and so forth. And that was one of our sort of cheap ways to try to leave lights in the shot and sort of have some sort of meaning while they're there. But you know, for work, but now we have to sort of pre-lock the scene so we can swing it 360 as much as we wanted. And that's how most of that movie was shot. But it was a difficult shoot, technically speaking, for those reasons. So.
Okay. Let me ask you one more thing about post-production. And when you're talking about budgeting, if we're saying, okay, let's say, for example, we're trying to shoot a $50,000 film, how much of that is going to be needed for post-production? Like, how much do you need to have, you know, an editor, sound mix, and you know, a score? I know it's always different, but just to give people kind of an idea.
A $50,000 budget?
Yeah.
Well, I'd say somewhere maybe around, I don't know, maybe 70-30, maybe 70 for everything, your production, actors, everything, and then maybe 30 for your post budget, you know, possibly somewhere in that range, maybe 35, maybe even 40, depending on what you're doing. But I'd say somewhere around 70-30, maybe it could work for you. Is
that ridiculously low, or is it like on par? I mean, I don't even know where that falls.
It's not, I wouldn't say, again, this is going to be, everybody is going to be a different answer on that, because I mean, I have a lot of resources for post too. So it just depends kind of what you have, you know, what you have to work with, you know. I mean, editing software is incredibly cheap these days, but it's not the software, it's the person operating it. So, you know, you could buy Final Cut for $300, but you can't really get a good editor for $300, you know? So, right. But if you're already a experienced editor and you can cut the film yourself and save money, yeah, you're going to save $5,000 in your budget or whatever it may be. But I would say $50,000, you know, your $50,000 budget, you know, you're not paying, you know, you're probably paying somewhere, you know, Yeah, I would say somewhere maybe maybe like 60-40 to 70-30. 30 and 40 being the post end of things. Mm-hmm. Post shouldn't be as much as your production budget, I guess is what I'm saying. You know, I mean, right. Production is going to be the chunk of the money is going to go to your production.
All right, that's going to do it for today's show. The phone kind of got funky there, and we were having some technical difficulties. And then we talked for a little bit more, but it wasn't really part of the show. So I'm just going to end it there. I want to thank Danny Draven for coming on the show. Don't forget to check out his book, The Filmmaker's Book of the Dead. Absolutely the Bible of horror filmmaking. Go to Amazon and get it today, because it's if you want to be a horror filmmaker, there's like just tons and tons of information in there.